Simon Cowell breaks down in tears after what happened to Courtney Hadwin. Picture this. A judge who has sat through thousands of auditions, who has heard every kind of voice imaginable, who built a career on being impossible to impress. Now picture that same man going quiet, his jaw tight, his eyes glassy, because of one teenage girl from a small town in England. That reaction has become part of television history, and it all traces back to a single name, Courtney Hadwin. But the real story isn't just about a talent show moment. It's about what happens after the applause fades, when a child prodigy is handed to an industry that doesn't always know how to hold something that fragile. Today we're going to walk through Courtney Hadwin's whole journey, from a shy schoolgirl in County Durham to a global viral sensation, through the years she seemingly vanished, and finally to where she stands today. Stay with us, because this story is far more layered than a 2-minute audition clip could ever show. Before the bright lights and the standing ovations, Courtney Hadwin was just a kid growing up in Heselden, a quiet former mining village near Hartlepool in the northeast of England. She was raised alongside her younger siblings by her parents, who worked hard to give their children a stable home in a town that wasn't exactly known for producing international pop stars. Music found Courtney early. She sang around the house as a small child, dabbled in school plays and musical theater, and slowly began experimenting with covers of songs she loved. Like a lot of young singers of her generation, watching another child performer succeed lit a spark in her. For Courtney, that spark came from watching Connie Talbot on Britain's Got Talent, and from that point on, singing stopped being a hobby and started becoming a purpose. By the time she was 9 or 10, Courtney had decided she wanted to take her voice seriously. Around age 11, while she was a student at her local school, she performed at a lunchtime open mic, and the response from her classmates was immediate. People were stunned that a voice like that belonged to someone so young. A video of the performance made its way onto social media and spread quickly around her local community, and suddenly, the girl next door had a bit of a reputation. That kind of early attention could easily go to a child's head, but by most accounts, Courtney simply kept doing what she loved. She began performing in local venues to help pay for singing lessons, and with the support of her family, she trained at a handful of local music schools, slowly sharpening a voice that already sounded far older than her years. Her first real taste of competition came in 2015 when she entered Teenstar UK in Newcastle and made it all the way to the grand final with a soulful cover of a Bob Dylan classic. The following year, she picked up a Local Performer of the Year award and became a finalist in another regional talent competition, all while continuing to build a name for herself on stages around the Northeast. That same year, she opened for a major touring act in front of a crowd of thousands, a moment that made it clear she wasn't just a talented kid with a nice voice. She had genuine stage presence, the kind that's hard to teach. In 2017, Courtney auditioned for The Voice Kids UK, delivering a raspy, powerful rendition of a Tina Turner classic that immediately caught the attention of the coaches. She joined a coach's team, battled her way through the rounds, and eventually reached the final as one of the standout performers of the season. Through all of this, something consistent kept showing up in interviews and profiles about her: an intense work ethic. Courtney practiced vocal exercises daily, treated every performance like it mattered, and leaned heavily on the encouragement of her family, who made real sacrifices, taking on extra work and long drives, just so she could chase every opportunity that came her way. By early 2018, Courtney had built up enough of a profile that producers from America's Got Talent invited her to audition for the show's 13th season. It wasn't something her family had been chasing directly. The opportunity came looking for her. And it turned out to be the moment that would change the entire direction of her life. When Courtney first walked onto the America's Got Talent stage, she looked exactly like what she was: a shy 13-year-old from a small town, clearly nervous, hardly the picture of a future viral sensation. Then the music started, an energetic cover of an Otis Redding soul classic, and the transformation was almost jarring. The timid schoolgirl disappeared, replaced by a performer with a raw, gritty, impossibly mature voice, moving across the stage like she owned it. The judges sat there visibly stunned. One of them later described watching her walk out shy and then explode into performance like watching a completely different person take over. That reaction wasn't performative for the cameras. It was the honest response of adults who simply weren't expecting what they got. One judge on the panel hit the golden buzzer that night, sending Courtney straight through to the live shows and comparing her voice to legendary blues and rock vocalists of a previous generation. Within hours, clips of her audition were spreading across the internet, eventually racking up hundreds of millions of views. She wasn't just a contestant anymore. She had become a global talking point, discussed on entertainment shows, dissected by music critics, and celebrated by casual viewers who had never heard of her a day earlier. She advanced through the quarterfinals and semifinals with performances that consistently blurred the line between child performer and seasoned artist, eventually finishing 6th overall in the competition. It wasn't the win many expected, but by that point, the placement almost didn't matter. America's Got Talent had already done its job. It introduced Courtney Hadwin to the world. Not long after the season wrapped, she was signed to a major recording label in partnership with a well-known record company, backed by one of the show's most influential judges. For a 13-year-old from a mining village in England, it must have felt like the fastest fairy tale imaginable. But fairy tales rarely account for what happens once the credits roll. What followed for Courtney was less magical than the headlines suggested. Almost overnight, she went from a kid who sang for fun at open mics to a commercial prospect expected to deliver polished, radio-ready music on an adult timeline. She was suddenly juggling interviews, promotional appearances, transatlantic travel between the UK and the US, and long recording sessions with professional songwriters and producers who had very specific ideas about the kind of artist she should become. In later interviews, Courtney has been candid about how disorienting that period felt. She has talked about walking into rooms full of adults who all had opinions about who she should be as an artist, long before she had any real chance to figure that out for herself. That tension between the raw, instinctive performer who blew away a television audience and the polished pop soul act the industry wanted to build around her became the defining struggle of Courtney's teenage years. She was still a kid learning to manage nerves before a weekly televised performance, and at the same time, she was expected to act like a seasoned professional in songwriting sessions with adults twice her age. It's not hard to see how that could wear a person down, let alone someone who hadn't even reached high school. As the initial wave of attention began to settle, something noticeable happened. Courtney's public presence started to shrink. Social media posts became less frequent. Her name stopped popping up in headlines the way it once had. For a young star who had been genuinely everywhere just months earlier, the quiet was jarring, and it didn't take long for fans and internet speculation to fill in the gaps. Was she sick? Had something happened behind the scenes? Had she simply walked away from music altogether? The truth, as it usually is, turned out to be far less dramatic and far more human. Courtney wasn't disappearing because something catastrophic had happened to her. She was stepping back to figure out who she actually wanted to be, away from cameras and contracts. It's worth being clear about something here, because there's a lot of noise online about this part of the story. Over the past couple of years, viral clips and retrospective videos have circulated claiming that the judge who signed her, visibly emotional and out of character, publicly admitted regret over how the industry handled her rise, saying they pushed her too far too fast. As of now, there's no verified interview, no credible mainstream outlet, and no confirmed footage that actually backs up that specific quote. It's the kind of claim that spreads easily because it feels emotionally satisfying, but responsible storytelling means being upfront that this particular moment appears to be internet speculation rather than a documented fact. What we can say with confidence is that Courtney's early industry experience was, by her own account, overwhelming, and that whatever conversations may or may not have happened behind closed doors, her path forward was ultimately something she had to build herself.
And build it she did.
Rather than staying locked into a system that didn't quite fit her, Courtney gradually stepped away from her early label arrangement and began working independently. She connected with a Grammy-winning producer known for his work with iconic soul and blues artists, and together they started crafting music that felt personal rather than manufactured. Songs with titles that hint at vulnerability, resilience, and reclaiming identity started to emerge, marking a clear shift from the polished, industry-shaped sound of her early teenage years to something rawer and more her own. By 2025, now in her early 20s, Courtney has spoken more openly about what those early years actually felt like from the inside. The exhaustion, the loss of creative control, the pressure to perform before she was emotionally ready for what fame demanded. Rather than framing it as a tragedy, she's talked about it as a turning point, a period she had to move through in order to find her actual voice as an artist rather than the version of her voice the industry wanted to sell. Her newer music has been described by fans and critics alike as emotionally raw, blues-soaked, and far more reflective of the artist who first stunned that television audience with nothing but a microphone and pure instinct. Her broader independent project has been framed as her most personal work to date, built around themes of identity, anger, healing, and self-ownership. Stripped-down performances have circulated online, showing an artist far more comfortable simply being herself than the polished, camera-ready version that was pushed on her as a young teenager. Fans who followed her since the AGT days have responded with a mix of relief and pride, many commenting that this newer chapter finally feels like the real Courtney, not a manufactured product. So where is she now? Today, Courtney lives a much quieter, more grounded life than the one you might expect from someone whose audition was watched hundreds of millions of times. She's based back in the northeast of England, close to the community that shaped her, and she's built a small, dedicated team around her rather than relying on a massive label machine. She remains active online, sharing behind-the-scenes glimpses of studio sessions, casual updates about daily life, and honest reflections on mental health, something she's become fairly outspoken about. Rather than using social media purely as a promotional tool, she treats it more like a genuine connection point with the people who supported her from the very beginning. Professionally, she's continued to build momentum on her own terms. She's performed at notable venues across the UK, and in one particularly meaningful moment, she was personally selected to perform a tribute to one of her musical idols at a prestigious gala in the United States, a nod to just how far her artistry has come since that shaky, nervous walk onto the AGT stage years earlier. She's currently working on her debut album, blending elements of rock, soul, and punk influences, describing the process as something that finally feels honest rather than staged. Looking back at Courtney Hadwin's journey, it's hard not to see it as a pretty stark example of how brutal the entertainment industry can be for young talent. A 13-year-old with an extraordinary gift was thrust into a system built for adults, expected to handle pressure, scrutiny, and commercial demands that would challenge even experienced performers. It's a pattern we've seen play out with other child stars across music and entertainment more broadly, and it raises real questions about how much support young talent actually receives once the cameras stop rolling and the contracts get signed. What makes Courtney's story stand out, though, is the way it ends, or rather, the way it continues. She didn't get swallowed up by the pressure. She stepped back, took the time she needed, and came back on her own terms, older, wiser, and finally in control of her own artistic direction. Whatever really happened behind the scenes with the people who shaped her early career, the most important part of this story isn't a viral rumor about a judge's private regret. It's the fact that a girl from a small mining village in England went through the ringer of overnight fame and came out the other side still standing, still singing, and finally sounding like herself. What do you think about Courtney's journey from that shy schoolgirl in County Durham to the artist she's become today? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into the real stories behind your favorite talent show moments.